I have been emphasizing that inventory is an asset on the balance sheet, but it can also be expensive. So what exactly am I talking about? There are three costs, basically two costs of inventory, and I have added the shortage cost at the end, which is lack of inventory. So let us understand what these three costs are. The first cost of inventory is the most important, which is called the holding cost. Some managers call it carrying cost. So we are talking about inventory holding or inventory carrying cost. So when I carry inventory or hold inventory, what are some of the costs that I'm going to incur? Let us brainstorm. I need a place to keep this whole inventory, right? So I need to store the inventory or warehouse the inventory or put the cars that I have on inventory in a lot. All of these is going to cost you some money. What kind of money? I have to lease the place or rent the place or buy the place where you're going to warehouse. I have to build the warehouse. I need to have security in the warehouse. I need to have employees in the warehouse wherever I am keeping the inventory or on the lot where I am keeping the cars. These people need to handle the inventory. Higher the inventory, more handling. Insurance, you need to have insurance. If you have $1 million worth of inventory, you need to insure that for $1 million. It costs you money. However, if I have only $500,000 worth of inventory, the insurance cost will go down. Unfortunately, there have been studies which show higher the inventory, greater the probability of pilferage or shrinkage or plain stealing. I have visited many warehouses and distribution centers where they have very, very stringent regulations for people working there, because even if they have a small thing stolen every day, it can cost thousands and tens of thousands of dollars every time. So pilferage enhances with greater inventory. Breakage is another thing. The more inventory you have, there is a possibility of things breaking because you're handling more inventory. You're putting them in the same space that you have. In addition, the other next two things that I have put there, depreciation and obsolescence. If you carry excess inventory, there is a good chance that the age of the inventory also increases. When you talk about inventory, two very important measures, inventory turns as well as age, inventory age. When I say inventory turns, I'm talking about how many times can I turn my inventory over in a year. If I say Walmart has 8 inventory turns and Kmart has 6 inventory turns, it is obvious that Walmart is doing a better job than Kmart, because they are turning their inventory 8 times a year, whereas Kmart is turning their inventory only 6 times a year. When I say 6 times a year, theoretically, you have 2 months worth of inventory, which you can turn over 2 months, 4 months, 6, 12 months. In a year, you have turned it over 6 times. Whereas if you have inventory turns of 8, then you have no more than a month and a half of inventory. So for the same amount of revenues, you are turning your inventory more often. So you have less inventory. The age of your inventory is also less. Is that clear? So now what we are going to look at is obsolescence and depreciation. If the inventory ages, what happens? It depreciates, especially if it is an electronic item, or if it is a fashion item, or even a car. What happens once the 2015 model comes in? The 2014 model can be bought at $1,000, $2,000 less than the original price. That is because the car depreciated. Once the iPhone new model comes in, the old iPhone models depreciate quickly. The extreme case of depreciation is obsolescence. Things get obsolete. That is, the value becomes zero. You cannot use that any further. All of these are costs of carrying inventory. If you have exactly the right amount of inventory that you can sell, you don't have to worry about depreciation and obsolescence. But when you have more than what you can sell, which again you cannot predict how much you can sell, you end up with depreciation and obsolescence. Taxes, another cost of inventory. At the end of the year, depending upon how much you have in inventory, you got to pay cost. So how do companies look at holding cost? I explained to you some of the ways by which you incur cost. But the most important cost of inventory is the financial cost. If I have $2,000 locked up in inventory of a particular product, where did that money come from, that $2,000? Either it is my own money invested in inventory, or I borrowed that money. If I borrowed the money, I'm paying interest on that. If I have invested my own money, I have lost the opportunity cost of putting that money somewhere else, in some other technology, or somewhere else where I can earn that money or get a better return on investment. So what do companies do while estimating the holding cost? They use this simple formula, I times C, where C is the cost of the item, because that is the money that you have locked up in inventory. And what is I? I is a percentage. That percentage is a function of the interest rate plus another percent. That another percent depends upon the probability of this product breaking, getting obsolete, getting depreciated, getting stolen, on and on. But I is a percentage which can be 12, 18, 15, depending upon what the company picks, but it is not arbitrary. It is based on the prevailing interest rate at which the company can borrow the money, or the rate at which they are making money on other investments, plus a percentage which can vary from a television to a cosmetic item to a furniture item, because the possibility of breakage of a television item is higher than that of a furniture item. The probability of stealing of a cosmetic item is higher than that of a television. The probability of obsolescence and depreciation is higher in a television than in a furniture. So you get the idea. That I is a percentage which is a function of two things. One is the prevailing interest rate, and the second component is a number that is subjective, that percentage, based on the probability of obsolescence, depreciation, breakage, and so on. So that is how companies calculate the holding cost. And holding cost is per unit per year. So keep that in mind. It can be per month also. But when I give you a problem to solve, or when you are looking at a realistic situation also, make sure again that if the interest rate is in per year, then it is holding cost per unit per year. If the interest rate is given in month, then obviously you can multiply that by 12 or say that the holding cost per unit per month. The second cost is ordering cost. In manufacturing, that was setup cost. You recall setup. Setup I discussed in lean manufacturing. Setup is the time taken to switch over from the manufacturing of product A to the manufacturing of product B. Ordering cost is somewhat similar to that. Ordering cost is the cost to place an order and receive it. What are all the costs in purchasing, procurement? All of these, every time you place an order. What is the paperwork involved? What are the different levels of approval required? All of this is taken into consideration an ordering cost. And ordering cost is typically denoted by the letter S and holding cost by the letter H. And S is the ordering cost per order. So keep that in mind. Holding cost was holding cost per unit per year, per unit of the item. Whereas ordering cost is not dependent on the number of units. It is the same amount of work and effort that is expended, whether you want to order 20 units or 200 units. The same process, the same level of approvals. So you have the purchasing department that is involved in procurement and ordering. So typically what companies do is they come up with a round number, $200 to place an order. How did they get that? It is a very unscientific way. They look at the entire purchasing department's budget divided by the total number of orders processed during the entire year. That is how they come up with the ordering cost per order. The last cost is shortage cost, which really is not an inventory holding cost. As you can see, it is incurred when there is no inventory or lack of inventory. So what happens when there is shortage? Your customer service will go down. If you're a manufacturing company, then you are not meeting the lead time of your customer. You're not shipping the product on time. If you have a very unique product and the customer is willing to wait, then you really don't have any shortage cost. But if the customer has the ability to go to a different supplier or a different manufacturer, then obviously you are in trouble. Maintaining that inventory and making sure you ship the product on time is extremely important. So again, shortage is not good for companies in manufacturing. How about in retail? Is it any better? Absolutely not. In retail, shortage can be a sound of failure in the organization, especially if you're talking about companies like Walmart and Kmart. Empty shelf of any product is the worst case scenario for the retail organization. Why? If you don't find something in Walmart, you go to Kmart and vice versa. If you don't find something in this grocery store, you can go to the other grocery store. The customer is not going to wait for that product, right? So shortage costs are extremely high in many of these companies in retail. So what do companies do? Again, what they do is if the holding cost is $1, for example, per unit, they assign a multiple of the holding cost as the shortage cost. So they say 20 times. If the shortage is detrimental for the organization, they will put a very high value on the shortage cost so that whenever an operations manager is using a mathematical model or even common sense, then they will know that it is better to have more inventory than any kind of shortage, because shortage will incur loss of profits because you're not able to sell that product which is not on the shelf. It can result in loss of customers. How many times has it happened to you as a customer? You go to a particular retail outlet once, twice, 3 times, you don't find what you want, and you never go back to that place. So you lost a customer as a retail outlet. Worse, you may go and tell your friends and family. As they say in marketing, one happy customer talks to one other person, whereas one dissatisfied customer talks to 20 others. So same thing can happen in inventory. If you don't find the product, that particular person's 20 other friends and family may hear that, and they may avoid your particular retail outlet. So loss of customer goodwill. In manufacturing, there are penalties many a time. If you say that you're going to be done in 2 weeks, and if you don't get it done in 2 weeks because you don't have inventory, there can be penalties. So it is very important that you carry inventory, and if you don't, if there are shortages, there is going to be a huge penalty. So it is a real trade-off between having inventory, which costs money, but not having inventory, which causes shortage. So that is the life of an operations manager, trade-offs.